So as North Korea rattles its sword, President Trump is working to engage American allies in reeling in Kim Jong-un with allies like South Korea and China and Australia, at least hoping that they will help. I'm joined now by Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister of Australia. Thank you very much for talking to us. First of all, what kind of help is the U.S. getting and will get in trying to reel in North Korea?
The key diplomatic supporter for President Trump's strategy at present is actually China. And that's why the Mar-a-Lago summit with the president was so important. I think what President Trump achieved there was to deliver a clear message to Xi Jinping that this was the US's #1 national security priority. It wasn't a made-up concern. It's a real concern. It's got technical dimensions and a timetable. And therefore, bringing pressure to bear through his communications with the Chinese to cause them to take new measures with the North Koreans, that, frankly, is the bottom line in all this, if any diplomacy is to work.
If any diplomacy is to work. I mean, when you say that, we must look at history. We must look back in 2003, a second round of failed six-party talks involving China, Japan, North Korea, Russia, South Korea, and the United States. That clearly backfired under the Clinton administration as they eased sanctions. So diplomacy, historically, has not worked. If we were to have to respond militarily, considering we have naval ships on the ready in case, just in case, what would be our next step in the region?
I think you're right to say that past diplomacy has failed. It has. Let's just look at the evidence. It's there. This guy's conducted something like 37 missile tests in the last year or so. Total now of 5 nuclear tests, maybe another one coming. We don't know. But the key thing is that diplomacy has failed. If you've got a clear line of communication with China, the question is a new diplomacy possible while the United States maintains a military option, a unilateral option, on the table in order to induce a diplomatic outcome? What might that look like?
Yeah.
With our Chinese friends, that may mean, for example, will the Chinese begin to reduce oil exports to the North Koreans if, for example, there's another nuclear test? And remember, what China has at its disposal is refined petroleum, crude petroleum, jet fuel, aviation fuel, the things that actually turn the wheels of the North Korean economy. Now, the end point for the United States, and I think for China, is to achieve the denuclearization of North Korea. But getting the Chinese into a combined strategy with the United States, which I think is what President Trump is looking for, as opposed to separate or, at best, a little overlapping strategies, is where I think we should be going.
All of us, of course, would like to see this end diplomatically, to end peacefully. Many believe we do not want to get involved in a war with North Korea. But we also need to listen to Kim Jong-un and his threats and take them seriously to prevent. He, at one point, Pyongyang had said during the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, which obviously failed. All talks have always failed, that Pyongyang would never return to talks. Are easing sanctions or putting pressure in the relief of aid by withholding aid, is that really going to be enough to stop them from trying to move forward with their nuclear program?
It depends on what type of sanctions you're talking about. There's stuff which is kind of like a mosquito bite, or there's stuff which actually matters. And that's why I go back to the question of oil. Or if you don't have oil in the American economy, guess what? Things stop. And guess what? The North Korean economy, small that it is kind of the same. So I think that is where the focus should come. Also, when you look at a possible combined new diplomacy between China and the United States, it could have a whole series of new things on the table which avoids any form of military action. It's tough, it's hard, and I think President Trump, through his conversations with President Xi Jinping, will be fully briefed on the complexity of all that and the new elements in it. But just to pause on the question of the military option, the key complexity for the United States is this. If there was a unilateral strike militarily on North Korea in order to degrade or to destroy or to retard the North's nuclear capability, then the question for all American military planners is, what does the North then do immediately in response by way of a military attack on the south, using the vast array of artillery it has on the parallel, not far from Seoul. What will be the loss of life and destruction in Seoul if that were to occur? And what will be the attitude of the incoming new South Korean president once they have their elections on the 9th of May, which is very soon? I think these are the variables at play at the moment. So pumping up what I think the president's now trying to do, a new combined diplomacy with China, is the way to go.
Absolutely, China holds the key here.
I believe to a large extent, if you speak to the Chinese, it's not as if the North Koreans simply do what China says, because, for example, my best advice is the Chinese ambassador in Pyongyang has never met Kim Jong-un. There's a lot of frostiness in that relationship because China has backed anti-North Korean sanctions before through the United Nations Security Council. But apart from what China says, what will it do vis-à-vis oil supplies and other forms of financial and other sanctions in relation to the North? And if there is, for example, in the days ahead following the activities we've just seen in Pyongyang in the last 24 hours...
How about the threats, too?
A nuclear test, etc. Then I think we are into a whole new world of bringing in urgency to those new diplomatic pressures.
Okay. I mean, Kim Jong-un came out, in fact, and said, if the United States decides to strike, they will come to the United States. While it does not currently have a transatlantic type of missile that could potentially carry a nuclear warhead on it, there is a concern there. Should we be worried?
See, what I'm always worried about is someone who's followed this issue for a long time, and I've been to North Korea a few times myself as well over the years. The key question is not what North Korean leaders say, because there's always belligerence. It goes up, it comes down, but it's mainly up and always getting higher. The key thing is to observe their technical progress. That's the real technical timetable here. It's about missile range, missile accuracy, your ability to miniaturize nuclear material.
Their ability to go transcontinental with a missile. That's what a lot of people fear.
Or even medium-range missiles and their capacity from a submarine to reach Guam.
Right.
I mean, these are also potent. Right. So therefore, the question is, how do you deal with each of those as the technical timetable unfolds? I don't believe their language, even the most recent one, is the thing which should worry us most. It's the technical progress, and secondly, in the response, what can the US now do in the months ahead with China?
I believe we are in a good position. I believe that the meeting with China's president and President Trump went well. I believe we definitely did send a very strong message as we went ahead and dropped those 59 Tomahawk missiles in Syria while we're trying to get China to get on board to prevent that from ever happening in North Korea.
On the Mar-a-Lago outcome, my background is I'm a China analyst for into politics. But the bottom line is I think the China outcome as it relates to North Korea was a good one. There's now a high-level group involving Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, as well as General McMaster, the National Security Advisor. These are smart guys. They know what they're doing. And there's a timeline to work through what now can be done with the Chinese.
All right. Thank you so much. Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister in Australia, thank you very much for coming in.